an 8-kilometer-long roller coaster on the slopes of extinct volcanoes, dotted with climbs and descents with minimal safety. A track as beautiful as it is dangerous, even for the time when safety was less of a priority. A circuit built for men, not for boys. Well, this seems like being the script of a James Bond movie where the villain lives inside a volcano and is also a racing driver. But no, this is not a movie, and indeed, the biggest stars of F1 of the 60s and 70s were present in this circuit. Hello and welcome to this video. Today we are going to the Nürburgring, but not to the German one. We are going to France, to Clermont-Ferrand, the city of Michelin. It is also known as the Charade Circuit, and it is considered the French mini Nürburgring. Most modern F1 fans never heard of it, although, for the legend Sir Stirling Moss, Charade was the most beautiful circuit in the world. Nobody knows if he actually said these words, but let's pretend he did. Are you ready? Great, let's go! I start with an onboard lap, the only one that I know that uses the full circuit as it was originally, and it was shot in 1986, 2 years before it closed permanently as a long track. It was shot on practice. The driver was knowing the track as it was his first time there, and it was wet. So, he was not pushing, and even though he had some surprises. This was on a French national event, the Renault 5 GT Turbo Trophy. Remember that you have timestamps in the description and there are other onboard videos. And now a surprise. A lap in the modern long circuit, a true rare opportunity to compare it. We go in a Formula 4 by Lotus, a beautiful machine. This is the closest to an F1 experience on this track that I can give you. Enjoy!
La température, c'est bon. Voilà, on vient sur un groupe. Je parle pas énormément, pas parce que c'est forcément dur, mais parce qu'il faut rester un peu éveillé. Là devant moi j'ai Julien justement de la Classic Racing School. Il m'a dit s'il te plaît, la voiture roule en course la semaine prochaine. Fais-y attention. Donc on essaye quand même de préserver les mécaniques, même si c'est vraiment incroyable de rouler. Allez, salut Julien, merci. Dans la forêt, hop, c'est difficile de retenir dans le circuit. Le tracé est très sinueux, très vallonné. Je pense qu'ici à l'époque ça devait passer à fond. Et là on arrive hop sur une chicane. Et là, une épingle. Hop. À l'époque ça devait être quand même très très dangereux de faire des grands prix avec des Formule 1 sur ce circuit. Je n'ose même pas imaginer. Et là on arrive sur une partie très rapide. Hop là, avec un virage. Un virage à fond. De toute façon ici, à part les épingles, tout est à fond quasi. Et là on va arriver sur un raccordement. Hop, et voilà, là on a le raccordement. Je dois avouer que là récemment, on a fait des voitures. On a fait des voitures plus puissantes sur la chaîne, mais là c'est un régal, hein, vraiment. Avec cette... avec cette Formule Ford.
And now a quick lap in the modern version of the circuit. The history. The beginning. The Circuit de Charade, better known by many as Clermont-Ferrand and sometimes also known as Circuit Louis Rosier, is something of an oddity in the current age. A modern reimagination of a classic circuit that captures the essence of the original but with modern safety standards. The current circuit dates from 1989, but they had been dreaming of motor racing in the local area for almost as long as cars have existed. The first proposals for a race on the roads of the Auvergne region came in 1908, though this ultimately came to naught. It could never have existed. A second attempt was made after the Second World War, when president of the Sports Association of the Automobile Club of Auvergne, Jean Auchatrer, and accomplished racer Louis Rosier began planning a new course. A 4.6-kilometer course was proposed on the streets to the edge of the city of Clermont-Ferrand. The idea was very simple: to celebrate the 50th anniversary of the Gordon Bennett Cup, a former prestigious automobile competition that had seen its 1905 edition take place on a 134-kilometer circuit on the roads of Puy-de-Dôme, or Michelin Circuit, because it was the Michelin brothers who proposed it. Remember that previously races were held from town to town, on roads open to all passers-by. Following the dramatic accidents that have taken place, the circuit was closed to traffic and monitored. But that was one race, and 50 years before. Now, the posters, the ticket office, everything was ready for the event, which was to take place on July 10, 1955. However, the tragedy of the 24 Hours of Le Mans in June 1955, that caused the death of 84 people and injured 120, would put a stop to the circuit, just 1 month before the inaugural race. After this accident, the worst ever in motorsport history, it became forbidden to build urban circuits. The ACA did not abandon its project and turned to the mountains, to the west of the city. around the extinct volcano that dominated the city skyline. After an initial project for a mountain circuit, it was decided to retain the road crossing the village of Charade and to create a permanent section to connect it to the hamlet of Tede. So, with the help of Louis Rosier, a course was drawn up, and by adapting roads here, the first mountain course in France could be created. And there was enough space for proper pit and paddock facilities to be constructed. They were planning to build the country's most demanding circuit basically. Indeed, it was Louis Rosier, a brilliant driver and local boy, who was responsible for convincing Raymond Roche, director of the Reims Circuit and president of the International Circuits Commission, that the creation of a track a stone's throw from Clermont-Ferrand was possible. So work began, and in 1958 that was it. The Charade Circuit was born, unfortunately without Rosier. He was killed in a crash at the Montlhéry racetrack in October 1956 and never witnessed his idea become a reality. I covered that track in this series, the link is in the description. A rare thing at the time, the Charade operation was carried out without financial intervention from the French state. The total cost, 100 million francs at the time, was covered 50% by the General Council, 25% by the Société du Circuit Automobile d'Auvergne, and 25% by the municipalities of Clermont-Ferrand, Royat, Chamalières, Serrat, and Saint-Jean-Champanel. Beyond the simple sporting event, the municipalities and the General Council were betting on this major investment and intended to benefit from the tourist and media spin-offs. Why is the Charade Circuit so unique? It's a track with character, according to Henri Pescarolo. The first version, which saw its first race organized in the year it opened, in 1958, offered a 8-kilometer track through the volcanoes of Auvergne, characterized by strong variations in altitude, 800 meters of average altitude, as well as a road surface just 7 meters wide. The drivers took real mountain pass roads, with many hairpin bends overlooking ravines. Some sections were as dangerous as they were exciting, such as the compression of Gravenoire to go back up the slope. In total, there are 52 bends that litter this atypical circuit, so the drivers did not have time to get bored in the middle of the volcanoes, as there is barely a straight to speak of. It was known for its challenging layout, which favored the most skillful drivers and riders. Because the terrain did not allow the creation of a circuit, as the slopes were so steep, in the end a road was built specifically for the circuit, the others being widened and resurfaced. The longest straight was only 590 meters. On the grandstand side, only the press was allowed to go. Spectators gathered on the slopes of the volcanoes around the track to admire the drivers. On the safety side, simple earth embankments had been erected to separate the asphalt from the ravines. In this circuit, just like in the Nürburgring, spectators could sit on the mountainside to enjoy striking views, but also in the grandstand built in front of the starting line, but here it faces a steep paddock. It was literally a racing circuit embedded in the mountain, totally different of the current circuits that look all the same. First races. The circuit was ready for its first race in July 1958, when 60,000 excited spectators crowded along the route to watch a 3-hour endurance GT race The International 3 Hours d'Auvergne, won by Ines Ireland in a Lotus 1100, ahead of 4 Ferrari 250 GTs. The small Lotus victory proved that on the highly selective Charade Circuit, power is not necessarily the most important thing. There was also a Formula 2 race, something very typical in those days. It was Maurice Trintignant in his Cooper Climax who was the first winner in the single-seater race ahead of Ivor Bueb. The following year, 1959, Stirling Moss competed on the track for the first time and allegedly declared, and I quote, "I don't know a more wonderful track than Charade," end quote. Also in 1959, Ivor Bueb, winner of the 1955 24 Hours of Le Mans, died following a dramatic crash during a Formula 2 race. The death would mark the only driver fatality at this circuit. In this footage, Ivor Bueb is lying on the ground after being thrown from his car. He is still conscious, but he will die of his injuries a few days later. Safety in those days was not a word used in the racing dictionary. Just look at the way he was transported. Still, in 1959, the circuit was recognized by wider international motorsport community, becoming a venue of the French Motorcycle Grand Prix. The first winner in 1959, both in 350cc and 500cc classes, was the world champion John Surtees. He repeated 500cc class victory in 1960, switching to four-wheel races after that. Although lacking modern facilities available on other circuits, the Auvergne circuit will quickly become a must for all fans of motor racing. The Auvergne Trophy quickly goes from 3 to 6 hours. It is incorporated into the calendar of the World Sports Car Championship in 62 and 63. At over 5 miles in length, this was a circuit of considerable challenge, which brought out the best in the bravest of drivers. Danny Hulme commented once that many drivers wore open-face helmets so they could throw up more easily as they went down the left-right-left hills that led off the volcanoes. Indeed, the sinuous track layout caused some drivers like Jochen Rindt in the 1969 French Grand Prix to complain of motion sickness. Formula 1 arrives. With Formula 1 preferring the fast, open roads of Reims and Rouen until 1965, when Clermont-Ferrand snatched away the French Grand Prix. Jim Clark won for Lotus with an all-British podium completed by Graham Hill and Jackie Stewart. Jim Clark stamped his authority and displayed his mastery by getting pole, victory, record lap and race always in the lead. The race was also notable for featuring the cameras of John Frankenheimer's Grand Prix movie, which stayed on after the race to complete filming, capturing the circuit for posterity as it enjoyed its heyday. The Grand Prix Circus returned 3 more times in 1969, for which a new pit lane separated from the track by Armco barrier was created, won by Jackie Stewart in a Matra Ford after an intense fight with Jean-Pierre Beltoise. 1970 and 1972, with victories falling to Jochen Rindt and Jackie Stewart again, though Chris Amon can count himself extremely unlucky not to win the 1972 event, having dominated the race for Matra before a puncture destroyed his chances of victory. Punctures were a permanent hazard at Clermont-Ferrand, thanks to the dark volcanic rocks which lined the roadside. It was one of these stones, thrown up by the Lotus of Emerson Fittipaldi, which penetrated the visor of Helmut Marko that same year, blinding him in the left eye and ending his racing career. More on this later. The Charade F1 Circuit's winners list. So, in total 4 Formula 1 French Grand Prix have been held at Charade, in 65, 69, 70 and 72. Jackie Stewart is the only driver to have won twice there, while Jochen Rindt and Jim Clark complete the list of winners in Auvergne. The fastest lap, meanwhile, belongs to Chris Amon, with a pole time of 2 minutes, 53 seconds and 9 tenths. His average speed was 166.7 kilometers per hour. Absolutely crazy for a 52-turn truck, a record that can no longer be improved. But Charade did not only host Formula 1. Between 1959 and 74, the Motorcycle World Championship was set up for the French Grand Prix 10 times. The legendary Giacomo Agostini would win the last 2 editions. Crashes. As you can imagine, on a challenging track like this, there were crashes even from the very first race, and they showed the lack of safety measures in that era, especially in a track like this with 8 kilometers long. There was a telephone line for the marshals to communicate, but when you compare it with nowadays technology, it looks rather comical indeed. But that's the way things were in the late 50s. Racing was only for brave and crazy men. In F1, crashes also occurred, but usually on practice days. So there's a few pieces of footage about them or none at all. In 1965, Graham Hill crashed hard after his throttle cable jammed and remained open. In 1972, Joe Bonnier and François Sever crashed during the first practice. The French crashing a brand new Tyrrell out for the very first time, with Jackie Stewart still preferring to drive the old car at that stage. Even when the layout changed, they still happened in French national races. The end. Logically, due to its location, the Charade Circuit has always been difficult to develop and maintain. In truth, Clermont-Ferrand was never likely to survive as a venue for the French Grand Prix for long. The world's most complete and modern circuit sprang up in Paul Ricard in 1971, and the French Grand Prix moved away never to return. It was like comparing the future with the past, and several accidents from the very first race claimed victims or caused serious injuries. As mentioned before, the volcanic rocks were a real problem, and during the 1972 French Grand Prix, the last one to be run on this circuit, they caused some less glorious moments like the loss of Helmut Marko's eye or the 10 drivers that suffered tire punctures. Drivers who skirted the track edge would send rocks flying in the middle of the road and into the path of pursuing competitors. Remember, given the shape of the curves, it forced the drivers to cut them in several places, and that was the big problem. Helmut Marko. On race day, the drivers were well aware of the warning from race direction, which indicated that the marshal's work in cleaning the track from stones had not been completed. Helmut Marko, on the 8th lap of the race, had to stop his BRM, his Grand Prix, and his career. He was battling towards the man on his way to his first world title, Emerson Fittipaldi. Coming out of a bend, Fittipaldi goes slightly off the line, running over gravel. Marko, who was following him a short distance away, is hit by a stone, which breaks his visor and injures his left eye. Keeping his other eye open, the Austrian manages to pull over, only to faint, and is helped by Vic Elford. Once taken to the circuit's medical center, the disinfectant applied by the doctors irremediably worsens the situation, with the Austrian only being taken to hospital in the evening. Marko's career ends here. I read somewhere that he would move to Ferrari in 1973, but I don't know. The truth is that the fate of the winner of the 1971 24 Hours of Le Mans decides the future of Charade. Although major renovation and development work is undertaken, the drivers met and they decided that the 8 kilometers of asphalt on the heights of Clermont-Ferrand was simply too dangerous. The late Patrice Bescot, historian of the circuit, said in 2021, and I quote, "When you are on circuits like Charade, the driver knows that he can't afford to play with the track limits and he has to respect the layout. The slightest exit is a permanent danger." So it's no wonder that there were complaints over the circuit length, the quality of facilities and safety. And when you consider that mountainside runoff areas were made up of catch nets, it's hard to argue with that decision. After F1. The last motorcycle Grand Prix was held in 1974. Clermont-Ferrand soldiered on, continuing to host races for the Trophée d'Auvergne over the next decade, though increasingly it faded away to international racing. A schedule was fulfilled with Formula 3 sports car and touring car races. In 1983, marshals were killed during a touring car race, and the writing was on the wall. In 1984, there was a driver's protest over track safety. With no room to provide runoff areas on the mountain section, the classic course finally closed to racing in 1988. Another concern will be also added to security issues. At that time, local residents started to complain about the noise caused by cars driving on the track. In a few words, its character and dangerousness would finally win, and they closed the long circuit permanently. In order to adapt the circuit to standards, a new version was created in 1989. In reality, planning for a shortened circuit was actually begun as far back as 1971, but several legal appeals and land issues delayed the work. The new Circuit de Charade opened with a grand ceremony in June 1989, attended by racing stars such as Fangio, Moss and Brabham. The part crossing the hamlet of Charade was removed, and a portion of nearly a kilometer was built to form a loop of 3.9 kilometers. Although part of the history of the circuit was removed, the new version, much safer, preserved the soul of the track with significant elevation changes and technical blind curves. Pit and paddock facilities still remained relatively modest by modern standards, and the new track was never likely to host international racing. However, it quickly became a worthy addition to the national racing scene. Under pressure from local residents, the number of days dedicated to the competition has been reduced to 10. The classic racing school has also made its home at the Charade Circuit, offering the chance to drive 1960s Formula Ford racers and learn about performance driving techniques with seasoned instructors. In 2000, work began to finally close off the roads to the public, with the track becoming a truly permanent facility and featuring new pit garages and a widened pit lane. A new entry road was also constructed, greatly enhancing access to the circuit. The Charade Circuit today Today the circuit is being revitalized as the Mountain E Circuit, with a public-private partnership involving the local authority and Green Corp connection, transforming the facilities to support electric mobility. The aim is to become the world's leading green energy producing circuit by surpassing the Indianapolis Motor Speedway with the installation of 12 hectares of solar panel fields. An FIA homologated circuit reserved for electric cars will also be constructed, as will a new rallycross track for electric racers. Nowadays, Charade is mainly used for leisure activities, in particular with driving courses ranging from GT to historic single-seaters, which serve to recall the glorious past of the track. The pit lane is now marked out and separated from the track by a concrete wall. A control tower has been installed in the paddock. The fields where the trucks parked are now covered with tarmac. On the competition side, the circuit is making its return to the French Historic Circuit Championship in 2024. Recently, a track Grand Prix took place there. The Charade Super Show, which allows the old track to be reopened for a day, is now being held for a third year in a row. Recently, Marcelin Loeb, Jackie X and Giacomo Agostini joined the party. I think that this track is a great example of the times and their changes. A mountain racing circuit was always condemned to be only a part of the 20th century racing history. The Nürburgring is in both ways a good example of this and an exception. I am trying to finish the video about that huge circuit, but the amount of work needed is still too much for now. You can help my motivation by subscribing and pressing the like button. Cheers! And this is it. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, give it a like, subscribe for more videos like this, and leave a line in the comments section if you have something to say or ask. I see you in the next video. Take care.